Hi guys, this video is to help you with review quiz 3.2. And on this quiz, we're going to be analyzing a graph that looks like the one you're seeing right here. It's the aggregate demand and supply model that you've seen a lot before. In this model, as you can see, the short run aggregate supply is perfectly elastic. So we can say that we're in the Keynesian zone of the short run aggregate supply curve. So we're going to be looking at how we calculate the simple spending multiplier and the tax multiplier. Now, in order to do this, there's a few things that we have to know, or well, two variables. The first is the change in real output, or the change in GDP, real GDP. And you can see, you know what, let me do something here real quick that I should have done already. You can see that the change in real GDP as a result of the shift in the aggregate demand is 500, right? Let me do this real quick. Let's see. Okay, so we see from there's been a shift in the aggregate demand curve from here out to here. So we have an increase in real output from 2000 to 2500. So that gives us a change in real GDP of 500, and we're given that government spending increases by 100. So you simply use the formula, the spending multiplier for the economy is the change in GDP divided by the change in spending, which is 500 over 100 equals 5. So our simple spending multiplier we've calculated to be 5. Now, from once we know the multiplier, we can calculate the marginal propensity to save and the marginal propensity to consume, because we know that the change in GDP over the change in spending equals 1 over 1 minus marginal propensity to consume, or 1 over the marginal propensity to save. So we simply scoot down here. So we can calculate, we can say that 5, right? This is right here is 5 equals 1 over the marginal propensity to save, which is 0.2, 1 over 0.2, or 1 over 2 tenths equals 5. And now we can easily calculate the marginal propensity to save, to consume, which I did this back. This should be marginal propensity to consume equals 1 minus the marginal propensity to save. That's a little bit easier. All right. Well, actually, it's correct. Now it's correct. So 1 minus 0.2 is 0.8. Now, why this makes sense is a consumer is going to either save or consume all of his or her income. So what they save and what they consume has to add up to equal 100% of their disposable income. So that's why if we know that they're saving, in this case, they're saving 20% percent of their disposable income, then they must be consuming the other 80% of their disposable income. Okay. Now we want to look at the a tax multiplier and then see how it's different from the spending multiplier. Okay, so we calculate the tax multiplier by simply, scoot down here, dividing the marginal propensity to consume by the marginal propensity to save. So 0.8 divided by 0.2 equals 4. So the tax multiplier is 4, which is less than the spending multiplier of 5. Now, so the way we want to think about that is if there is an equal cutting taxes, if the taxes decrease by the same amount as spending, you know, if we're comparing, you know, what effect would the same amount of a tax decrease have on the economy versus that same amount of a spending increase? And we find out that it's not going to increase the GDP by as much. So because we have a lower multiplier. So then we can do some simple math, just to divide. You know, if we actually want, if the policy makers or the economists who are deciding what to do here, if they actually want the GDP to increase by 500, and they're going to use a tax cut to do it, a decrease. Let me just copy this guy so I don't have to keep going back and forth. Okay, then you would just simply take the tax multiplier and take the amount that you want the GDP to increase by, which is 500, and divide it by 4 by the tax multiplier, and you find out that you need a tax cut of $125 in order to have the same increase in real output as you would with a $100 increase in the government spending. Okay, now why is that? Well, it's simple, because when the government spends money, 100% of that money is going into the economy. It's all spent. But since we know that the consumers in this economy have a marginal propensity to save of 20%, right here, since we know that, then we know that they're going to save 20% of whatever they get in their tax cut. So whatever extra disposable income they have as a result of the tax cut, they're going to save 20% of that money. So that 20% will not go directly back into the economy. Therefore, the multiplier isn't as large. So that's why you hear economists arguing that spending is going to, if you really want to quickly jumpstart a lagging economy, if you really want to move aggregate demand out to the right quickly, spending is more effective than cutting taxes. Okay, in the short run. Now, in the long run, you can have the debate, but this is what the calculus tells us in the short run. So we want to now in the model up here, we have we have an aggregate the supply curve that's flat, that's perfectly elastic. But how would this change our calculus if the supply curve was more in the neoclassical zone or upward sloping? So if we brought this guy over here, okay, now the question is, would a $100 increase in spending have the same give you the same increase in a real output? And it's obvious here that no, it wouldn't, because this shift is the same, right? This from here to here is representing that $100 increase in government spending. So the shift in the aggregate demand hasn't changed. However, since the short run aggregate supply is now sloping upward, we're going to have an increase in GDP or real output of only about half. So it's going to be here. So it's not going to be as large of an increase in real output. Okay. And then lastly, we want to look at what if wages and prices are perfectly sticky. Well, that's what we have. We'll take this guy out. That's what this is, right? A perfectly elastic short run aggregate supply curve implies that prices and wages are perfectly sticky. They're not going to go anywhere, right? No matter what. So we put a price level in here of whatever. Let's just say 100. Let's the right size, right? So if we have a so in this case, let me scoot that up. No matter where we shift the aggregate demand curve, price levels do not change, don't change at all. Now, what if we have the opposite extreme? What if the prices and the wages are perfectly flexible? Well, that would imply the long run aggregate supply curve, which could be anywhere here, but we'll put it here, okay? And if this is the actual situation right here, whoops, I want to get this guy yet. So if we're actually on the, if we're actually operating here, and our aggregate supply is in or I should say wages and the prices are perfectly flexible, that implies a perfectly inelastic aggregate supply, which is what the long run aggregate supply looks like. So in this case, what would happen is when you shifted the aggregate demand, the only thing that would change, because now prices are perfectly flexible, is prices would quickly adjust. If we shifted out to the right, the prices would adjust up, and if we shifted aggregate demand to the left, prices would quickly adjust down, but you would have no change in real output. Okay, and that's if prices and wages are perfectly flexible. Okay, and that is about it. And that should you shouldn't have any problems with review quiz 3.2. I'm sure you'll do very well.